I'm so delighted to be with you. You know, I started off my career in copywriting when I was 21 years old, so I've always had a love for copywriting, a love for advertising, and I so much love and respect you for all the work that you've done to become excellent in this area. I mean, you're the best. You're the best. I was 21 years old. I did not graduate from high school. I started so far behind I thought I was first. I was working at laboring jobs for several years, and then I saw an ad in the paper. It said, copywriter requires, a beautiful ad. Copywriter required a person who can make words express and flow and motivate and excite people and everything else. I thought, that'd be a great field to get into. So I went and applied to this little advertising agency for a job as a copywriter. And they, gentleman, I still remember, very nice guy, very bright, very smart, very articulate, well-educated, well-spoken. But I didn't even know what a copywriter was. I thought a copywriter was a person who created ads and pictures and all kinds of things. I had no idea, but he was very patient with me. And he said, why do you want to become a copywriter? Have you thought of something else? Because you really don't know anything about the field. And I was kind of put off. I was selling door to door at that time. So I said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. He was very gentle with me and so on. So I went down to the library and I got a book on copywriting. And I began to read the book on copywriting. I finally understood what copywriting was, which is something that we eventually get to. And so I read, and I looked at different copy, then I read another book, and I read another book, and I began just literally totally immerse myself in studying copy and studying the best advertisements of all time and the way that they were written and the various emotional appeals and so on. And so once I figured I had a sense for it, in the city that I was working in, this agency that I'd applied to was like number 10. Okay, I also found out the rankings of various agencies. So then I went to agency number 9, and I applied for a job as a copywriter. And this time they listened, and I had written a couple of things, taken a couple of ads from the paper and rewritten them and so on. They thanked me very much, and they said that really was not what they were looking for. And I said, well, why not? They said, well, it's because of this and because of that and so on. So I said, thank you very much. I went back and I kept reading and writing, and after another month I went to the 8th largest agency. And I worked my way up the food chain. I got rejected, but each time the rejections were less. Each time they were, if we had an opening, we would hire you. Finally, I got to the 2nd largest agency in the country, and they hired me as a junior copywriter. Because by that time I was ready, and the day before, the person who had the job was quitting, and so the day before I was ready to start as a copywriter with this major agency, I got a call saying, we're sorry, the other person decided to stay. And so we have to cancel your job offer. But we've spoken to the head of the largest agency in the country and told them about how impressed we are with you, and they just happened to have an opening, so I was hired by the largest agency in the country as a junior copywriter. Yeah. And I pass that story on not just for myself, but I pass it on because there's a lot of persistence required in this business. I just spoke to a gentleman, I was in Taipei last week, and I spoke to a gentleman named Terry Chang. And they brought him over to meet with me for half an hour, a big mucky muck from out of the country. Terry Chang is an entrepreneurial phenomenon. He's the Jeff Bezos, if you know of Amazon.com, of Taiwan. And 11 years ago, he went back to Taiwan after getting a degree in the U.S. to start a business, and he decided to start what he calls books.com, which is the equivalent of Amazon.com in the Chinese book language, of which there are many thousands of books. And he had to start off, he said there were 6,000 publishers. He had to get them to give him the rights to sell their books. And they were all very proprietary. They didn't want to allow their books out of their control because they wouldn't make the same amount of profit. Well, he had to knock on doors and knock on doors and knock on doors. He had to go from one to another, year after year after year. He had to beg, borrow, steal. He had to sell off, hypothecate every single part of his business. He said he kept working and working and working. It took him 7 years before he finally got most of the major book publishers to allow him to carry his books. He said it took him 6 years of calling on the number 3 publisher before they finally said yes. They said no for 6 years. It was only in the 7th year they gave him the right to carry the books. After that, the others all got on board. He's now the 3rd largest bookseller in Taiwan, probably the 3rd largest bookseller in the Chinese language. Within a year, he'll be number 2. Within 3 years, he'll be number 1. He's been in the business 11 years now, hammering away. So sometimes people, surprisingly enough, will say no to you. the first couple of times, and you just have to realize that you just have to keep calling back. He said if he had quit after he had been told no a few hundred times, he said he'd never accomplished anything. Now he's got 200 people. He's a phenomenon. He's written up in all the newspapers. He's wealthy. He's got a beautiful home. He said his wife just hung in there the whole time because it was real slim going for a long time, but he just never quit. And every single time I talk to a successful person, I ask them, what's the secret to your success? You know what they'll tell you? Is I just don't quit. I won't quit. I wouldn't quit. I just kept on. I never quit. So I pass that on to you. If you want to boil down success to just one thing, it's not intelligence or education or great grades or wonderful things. It's just never quitting. So today I want to talk to you about pumping up your profits. And I know Denise has told me and Michael has told me that you're some of the smartest people in America. Is that true? So you can take a lot of good ideas in a short period of time. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to sort of be your profit pumping up buffet for today. So I'm going to give you a lot of ideas. And some will be relevant to you and some will be not as relevant, but there will be a buffet. And you can pick whichever ones you think will help you to put on your plate to increase your profits. Because I believe that everybody here should be earning twice as much as they're earning today. As Joe said earlier, everybody here has the one concern. You don't ever want to have to worry about money again. Isn't that true? And the way that you don't worry about money is you have lots of it. See, I mean, in case you were wondering how you got to that, you have lots of it. And nobody worries about having too much. It's not a problem. It's having too little that is the problem. So I'll give you some ideas and your goal is to double your income. Just say, I want to double my income. I spoke to someone. Where are you? Christina, are you here? Are you here? Spoke to her. Yeah, there she is. Spoke to her at breakfast today. And when she started using my material, one of the concepts she told me, she came across this idea, is the amount you earn on the outside is largely determined by the way you think on the inside. So if you want to increase your income on the outside, increase the way you think about your income on the inside. So she did, and she doubled her income and doubled it again and doubled it again. She just kept raising her mental bar on the inside. And what happens is, like Joe will talk about the law of attraction, the secret is that you'll start to attract into your life people, opportunities, and ideas like today that will help you to achieve that financial goal. So whatever your best income has been up to now, set a goal to earn twice as much. Now, the rule in metaphysics, the rule in spirituality is be clear about your goal, but be flexible about the way of achieving it. Be flexible about the path that you follow. Be prepared to try lots of different paths. But be clear about your goal. Your goal is to double your income. Once you've doubled your income, then what's your goal? Double it again, of course. But you know, it's doubling your income the second time is much easier than doubling it the first time, and I'll tell you why. It's because now you know how. Well, now you know how. The great benefit that you get from increasing your income is you learn how to do it. And then you just do more and more of it and get better and better at it and get more and more results in shorter and shorter time. Well, we know today we're living in the very best time in all of human history. We're living in the very best country in the entire world. If you listen to the stuff in the politics today, I call this the silly season. The silly season is on, and we are beset by most ads are attack ads. 90% of ads are negative. People are saying, oh, America's in terrible shape, blah, 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 blah. But they're saying this for political reasons. The fact is our economy, since the tax cuts of 2003, has increased 30%. It went from a $10 trillion economy, which is 30% of the entire world, with 5% of the population, to a $13 trillion economy in 4 years. That is phenomenal. No one has ever seen growth like this in all of human history. The stock market is at the highest level it's ever been. Something like 20 million new people have entered the stock market, have entered the work market in the last 6 years, and we have a problem with 12 million illegals because we cannot find enough people to take all the jobs that are available. The level of home ownership is over 70%, the highest in any country in the history of man on earth. We have the highest standards of living ever dreamed of. We have more opportunities and possibilities than have ever been dreamed of before, and you are right here in the midst of this. Yet, with all of this, here's what we know, is that 20% of the people make 80% of the money. When I started off my career as a young man, somebody told me that, that 20% of people make 80% of the money. I said, really? He said, yes, that's a fact. And of course, it's the Pareto principle and so on. So I decided I want to be a member of the 20%. And I still remember that. I was about 23 years old. I say, well, if you can go down this road to the bottom 80% or that road to the top 20%, I think I'd like to be in the top 20%. So the next question I ask is, how do you get into the top 20%? And fortunately, Joe has written about this, and Herschel has written about this, and Michael Masterson has written about this. The answers have all been found. If you want to get into the top 20%, there's a very simple rule. Are you ready? Just do what people who are in the top 20% are doing. And do it over and over again until you get there as well. If I said to you, if you want to get from here to Miami Beach, a very simple way is just follow the same roads that anybody else would follow to get from here to Miami Beach, because jillions of people have already done it. The dumbest thing in the world is to try to make it up yourself. So that's what I will share with you. Now, there's an article in Fortune magazine that says the top 5% of Americans control 50% of American wealth. Actually, we used to say that 80% of the money in America is controlled by women. And they know how to get their hands on the other 20% in a pinch. Which turns out to be a true statement. But because women live much longer than men. It's very simple. And they automatically inherit what the men leave. So they wait long enough, they'll end up getting it all. Anyway, that's a separate subject. So here's the interesting discovery, is that everybody starts off at the bottom. I used to feel sorry for myself because I started off with nothing. I had no money. I lived in my car. Like Joe, I was homeless for a while. I lived in my car. I worked at laboring jobs. I slept on the ground. I never missed a meal, but I did postpone quite a few of them indefinitely. And once I lost 30 pounds just through careful eating. Or non-eating. Anyway, and I used to feel sorry for myself because I started off with nothing, and then I realized everybody starts off with nothing. Everybody starts off with little or nothing. And if anybody starts off with something, they blow it completely, as quickly as they can, get back to nothing. As a matter of fact, in America, whenever you make any money, the first thing people do, turn off your phone, is to blow it. As we get rid of the money. So Napoleon Hill, you know, there's a new book by Andrew Carnegie. Napoleon Hill was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to interview 500 of the richest men in America, all self-made, all started with nothing within one generation. And so he spent 22 years interviewing these people, and he came up with 3 conclusions. Number one is they all had certain qualities and skills in common, especially skills with regard to their fields in common. Number 2 is no one started with these skills. Many of them were penniless immigrants. Many of them came from farms and poor families. No one started with any of these skills. And number 3, all the skills are learnable. Of course, you know that because of the American Writers and Artists Guild. You know that all skills are learnable. But this was an incredible breakthrough to me, is you can learn anything you need to learn to achieve any success that you want to achieve. And if hundreds of thousands and millions of people have already done it, then you can do it as well. And 80% of all self-made millionaires in America start off selling personal services. Did you know that? They start off selling their own services. They start off with nothing. They have no assets. So they sell their own services, and they get better and better at selling their services, and they increase their value more and more. They increase their income, and then they do intelligent things with the money. They don't blow it. You know. Remember, I saw this bumper sticker recently. It said, "Dear God, please send us one more boom. This time I promise not to piss it all away." You know, well, anybody knows what I'm talking about there. Anyway, so I began studying business and financial success, and I found a very interesting discovery is that businesses succeed for a specific reason, and they fail for a specific reason as well. So here's a question for you. How many people here work on straight commission? How many people here work on sales or work on straight commission? Now that's a kind of a trick question, because the answer is we all work on straight commission. We're all in sales, and we all work on commission. We all work on getting a piece of the value that we create. The number one rule for becoming wealthy or financially successful in America or anywhere else is add value. Add value, create value, add value. And when we create and we add value, we get a piece for ourselves. And the more value we create, the bigger is the piece that we get. When Joe talks about earning $450,000 in one commercial, he's created value. People gave him money because he created value for them, and they gave it to him voluntarily, and they gave it to him gladly because of the value he created. So always remember, we are all on commission. We are all in sales. From the time you take your first job to the time you retire, you're the president of your own company, and you're in sales. You're the president of an entrepreneurial company with one employee, yourself, and you have one product to sell into a competitive market. What is it? Yourself, your own time. That's basically what everybody starts off with. Don't feel sorry for yourself. The only question is not where you are, but as we say, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. All that really matters is where you're going. So, and where you're going is limited only by your own imagination. So here's the second question. What's the highest paid work in America? Well, the highest paid work in America is thinking. And the wonderful thing is that you are knowledge workers. You are knowledge workers. So you're at the front of the line. Is that the highest paid work in America is thinking, because of what? And it's because of one of my favorite words, and you need to think of this word for the rest of your career. The word is the word consequences. is you can always tell the value of something by the consequences of doing it or not doing it. Now, you know this because you have invested an enormous amount of time and effort to develop your skills in copy, in advertising, internet marketing, and so on. You realize you're one of the 5%, the elite, that realizes the way that you improve your future is by getting more knowledge and skill in the present, investing the time and the hours and the money to learn the things, because the consequences of learning these critical skills and then getting better and better at them can be extraordinary. They can make all the difference between you having a wonderful life, living in a beautiful home, having money in the bank, retiring with a happy retirement for the rest of your life, or worrying about money all your life. So consequences are important. So thinking is the most highest paid skill of all. And the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. If you want to improve the quality of your life, you improve the quality of your thinking. Well, Calvin Coolidge once made this famous statement, which you've heard of. He said, the business of America is business. What we do in business is, what we do in America is we do business. And with regard to the geopolitical ramifications of this, every single administration from Washington all the way through to today has been focused on creating a world that is good for American business. Because a world that is good for American business creates opportunities and possibilities for the American people. And creating a world that is safe for American business, creating oil lines so we can have oil from wherever we have to have it, trading relationships, free trade agreements have all been aimed at improving the climate for American business. And when people say, oh, America's in the Middle East for oil, I'll tell you what, if we didn't have the oil that we are dependent on from the Middle East, what would happen to our economy? It would stop tomorrow. The economy would literally stop tomorrow. So we can be really happy that some of the smartest people in the world are doing everything possible to keep the shipping lanes open. So don't ever complain about that. People say we should put windfall taxes on the oil companies. Really? What if the oil companies stop producing oil? Do you know what you have to do to get a gallon of gas to your tank? It has to be brought out from 5,000 feet underground on the other side of the world. It has to be shipped by pipeline hundreds and thousands of miles to ships. The ships have to come all the way to the U.S. They have to go to refineries where they're refracted. They have to then be put through pipelines and then sent to cities and put into pump trucks and then taken to gas stations and put under the ground. And you still pay less for gasoline than you pay for a bottle of water. Can you imagine that? It's the question, you always have to ask the question, if the oil companies didn't do it, who would do it? And the answer is, thank God they're doing it. When you think about that, they have to invest billions and billions and billions of dollars so you can fill up your tank for less than you pay for a bottle of water. Isn't that interesting? I don't want to get into economics, but you know what the problem with politics is? It's the word politics. It comes from the Greek. Poly means many, and tix means voracious bloodsuckers. He said, the purpose of a business, he said, is not to make a profit, it is to create and keep a customer. Profit is the result of creating and keeping a customer in a cost-effective way. That's yours and my job, is to create and keep customers in a cost-effective way. Create and keep clients in a cost-effective way. Now, there's only 7 ways that we can increase our profitability. And I want to give these to you briefly, and then I'll come back to them and we'll talk about them. Number 1 is you can increase the number of leads. You can increase the number of leads. In other words, the people who may be prospects for your services. By the way, what is the difference between marketing and selling? I know you're all experts in this, so I'm sorry to ask you such a dumb question, but what is the difference between marketing and selling? Right. The answer is that marketing generates leads. In other words, it tells people that the product or service is available and makes people interested in finding out more, and selling converts the leads into customers. That's the major difference. It's really important to understand that. The purpose of marketing is to make selling unnecessary, or as unnecessary as possible. Really good marketing will bring people in waving the money, ready to buy, tear the product or service out of the vendor's hands. But that doesn't happen that often. So number 1, the way you can increase your profits is increase the number of leads, because there's a rule that says the quantity of leads determines the quality of leads. In other words, the more leads you have, the more likely it is that you have leads that will convert. The second rule is lead conversion, is to convert those leads. In other words, to have a specific method or process of selling that takes a person who is interested in using your services and takes them to the point where they buy your services. And I'll give you some ideas on that in a little while. Now, the third way to increase your profits is to increase the number of sales. Increase the number of clients that you have. Of course, that's obvious. How do you increase the number of clients you have? Is you have more leads coming in and you convert more of those to clients. And the fourth way you can increase your profits is you can increase the size. You can increase the size of each client, so that you're actually generating higher levels of revenues from each client. And sometimes the most successful companies will have only a few clients. I worked with one company that only had 6 clients. They picked the 6 companies that they wanted to work with. It took them 3 years to get those 6 clients. That's all they wanted, and they did millions of dollars worth of business. They didn't go after the rest of the market. They just picked 6. I worked with an advertising agency, did the same thing once. They looked at the 10 clients that they wanted. It took them something like 4 or 5 years to get 6 of those clients. And they were one of the most successful and profitable agencies in the business. So size of client is really important. Now, the 5th way that you can increase your profits is you can increase your profitability per client. Now, this is a really important area. And profitability means the amount of money that you earn relative to the amount of time and expense that you spend to get a client. In fact, many companies, by the way, make the mistake, many individuals and professionals are actually selling to clients where they're making little or no money. Sometimes they're losing money. And I'll explain that to you in just a second. And now the 4th way, or the 5th way, that you can increase your profitability, is, the 6th way. The 6th way is to get more resales, to get more repeat clients. And this is really important. And the number 7 is to get more referrals. So one of the things that you do on a regular basis is you give yourself a grade from 1 to 10. And you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good am I at lead generation? By the way, the more knowledgeable you become with regard to this, the more valuable you become as an asset to a client. Because most clients do not understand these 7 steps. So they're working here and they're working there. And sometimes one small change in one of these steps can dramatically change the financial results of a business. One small change in the way you do this can dramatically affect your financial results as well. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at generating leads? And remember, your weakest key skill in business sets the height of your success in that area. Your weakest key skill sets the height. It's the ceiling. So you could be very good at lots of things. You could be fabulous at writing copy, as I'm sure most of you are. But if you're poor at generating leads, then you sit at home watching a lot of television. Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? Hello? So it's really important. So you can say, all right, but here's the wonderful thing about skills. All skills are what? All business skills are what? They're learnable, so that you can learn how to do it. That's one of the reasons we come here, is because if you're weak in a particular skill, there's people in this room and outside this room who are experts in that skill. They will show you ways to generate leads. I was doing about $1,200 a month on my internet business about 7 years ago when I decided to get serious about my internet business. And I began to study the internet. I began to study writing, copywriting, product offerings, free things, and so on and so forth. And I just read the stuff. It was all there. I mean, people are eager to share ideas on the internet, as Joe was earlier. Today, last month, we did $110,000 in sales on the internet, which is about $1.3 million a year. Now, that may not be impressive to Amazon.com, but it ain't bad. It ain't bad. Pays the bills. There's enough money in my internet business now. I could stop working, just operate my internet business out of my backyard. My back room. But my point is this: is that what I did is just learn, and all the stuff is learnable. All the skills are learnable. So you can learn how to generate leads. All right? Lead conversion is really important. That's the business of sales. The rule is that nothing takes place until somebody sells something to someone. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, because the better you can get at converting leads, the more money that you'll make and the more opportunity you'll have to work doing what you do well and what you like to do. The 3rd area is to increase the number of clients, which of course is a function of numbers 1 and 2. Number 4 is to increase the size of each client. Sometimes when a client uses you, they will use you for a nickel, but they will have $1 worth of business for you. And what they'll do is they will give you a nickel to see how well you perform with that nickel. And sometimes it's worth your while to break your back, really working hard to make that client successful, to do the extra work, to go the extra mile. Because if you really satisfy this client, the client will give you much more work to do. And that leads us to increase the profitability of a client. The more time you invest in a client, the more you understand a client, the less time it takes you to understand how to write advertising. I've spent 8, 10, 15, 20 hours studying a client's business before writing advertising. But once you have mastered the essence of the business, you can write better and better copy and advertising with it. And the others, we say here, to get more repeat clients, which comes from the function of the others, and to get more referrals. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, because this is one of the most important things we do. So give yourself a grade on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing? And wherever you're the weakest, that's what is determining your income today. But the good news is that all these skills are learnable. You can learn the skills you need to learn to achieve any goal that you want within your business. Many people think that all you can do is all you can do. Is that if you don't know, if you can't do it, it means that you don't have a flair for it. People say, "Oh, I'm not very good at prospecting, or I'm not very good at selling, or I'm not very good at using the telephone, or I'm not very good at making presentations." Well, get over it. These are learnable skills. Can anybody here, by the way, drive a car? Ride a bicycle? Use a keyboard? Operate a cell phone? If you can do something like this, which is a very high level of complexity, every one of those skills, you can learn any business skill. You can learn any business skill. So don't allow yourself to be held back because you're weak in a single business skill. It's a learnable skill. You're not very good at speaking? Well, you will learn how. Every single person who is good at speaking today was one time terrified of it. They couldn't lead silent prayer in a phone booth, as they say. Now, there's a company in San Francisco called Maricon and Associates, and they did a write-up on them in Fortune magazine a few years ago, and they called them the Maricon Men. Take off on the movie. And what they do is they go into a company and they analyze the company, do a profit analysis of a company. And I want to give you this as a tool for you to think of. Remember, the more tools you have, the better that you can think with regard to your business. And what they do is they come out, and I designed this because from reading the article. But what they found is that every company has a series of products, services, activities, advertising, marketing, sales methods that are profitable and unprofitable. The first thing they do is they go into a multi-division company that has lots of products. And most products in multi-division companies, they lump together administrative expenses, overhead expenses, staff expenses, utility expenses, and so on. What they do is they go and they tease out and they work out the exact profitability of every product that the company sells. They took the exact sales volume, all the returns. They look the exact cost of advertising, cost of promotion, cost of production, cost of manufacturing, cost of shipping, cost of defects, cost of everything, to work out exactly the profitability of each product, or in your case, each service, or each client. And then they organize them on a scale. And they say, this is your number 1, this is your number 2, and there's always a scale, by the way. For whatever you do, if you do a series of things, there's a profitability that is attached to each one. And there's always a for number 1, there's always a number 2. There's always number 1, number 2. With regard to you and I, it's the number of hours that we have to put in to generate a certain amount of net revenue. The number of hours of travel, the number of hours of work, the number of hours of investment, and so on to generate a certain amount of net revenue. And then this is the profit. Then they find that a lot of the products that multi-divisional companies have are losing money. And so what they'll do is they'll show every single product of the company along a scale like this. And then they'll, by the way, when they do this presentation, they hand out barf bags to the senior executives because some of them throw up because they're finding they're putting all of their money. They've got this great product over here that sells like in huge quantities, and they're losing money every single time. And they can't understand why they're losing money. By the way, think of the words Ford, General Motors, Chrysler. That's where they are here. They're selling products where they're losing money. They're doing tens of billions of dollars worth of business and losing more money than you could even dream of ever even seeing in your lifetime. Imagine losing billions and billions of dollars a year on tens of billions of dollars in sales. What's going on? The answer is the costs of producing those products relative to what they actually end up with at the end of the day is so much lower. So one of the things you need to do, and by the way, this is very important as a tool if you want to be an advisor to your clients, is to help them understand what are their most profitable products. The worst use of time is for them to have you writing copy and doing advertising to sell more of a product that they're not making any money on. And many companies are not even aware of that until you help them to understand it. Whenever I show this to business people, it changes all their processes. They stop, they bring in their accountants and their controllers, they start to do call it forensic accounting. They go back and they look at every single product, and they're astonished to find that product, which has been sells like Old Man River, is what's maintaining this whole company, and they don't even pay attention to it. Whereas this product that they're spending all their time advertising and promoting is they're losing money every single time they sell one. So therefore, ask yourself, what are your most profitable services? What are the things that you do that are most profitable? What are your most profitable clients? What are your most profitable ways of marketing? Where do you get the highest level of response rate when you advertise, when you sell, when you visit, when you call on people, and so on, and then organize them like this. Now, if you go into a company like Ford, what happened with Ford is finally somebody stepped in with this, and you know what they did? They shut down 29 plants and laid off 74,000 people. Do you know what they did? They just canceled these. They said, we can no longer, these plants where are manufacturing products where we're losing money are dragging down the entire business. The business will drown if we don't get rid of these plants. And that's what General Motors is doing. Every large company eventually has to do this. They have to stop producing products and services where they're losing money. So in terms of profits, remember that net profit is the name of the game. That's what Baron de Rothschild said many years ago. Always focus on net profit. Not gross income, but the amount of money that you have left at the end of the day. What is your net profit? So really important. Okay. There are 4 keys, 4 thinking tools. Remember, you are knowledge workers, and the better you think, the better decisions you make. There's basically 4 keys to marketing strategy, and they've never changed. And if you're ever having problems in any area of marketing and sales, it's because of a problem in one of these 4 areas. And these are things that you think about. And by the way, these are things that you use to help your clients, because most clients have backed into their businesses and don't know these concepts. These concepts are very simple, but I've been astonished. I speak to Fortune 500 companies and they don't know about these concepts. Or, in many cases, they've stopped thinking about them. So number 1 is specialization. And specialization is the starting point of strategic marketing. Specialization means that you specialize rather than generalize. It means that you focus and concentrate. You hone in on your very best customers or your very best product and service. And there's 3 ways that you specialize. 1, you can specialize in a specific service. We could say a specific product or service. What many companies do is they find that the only way they can practice these is divide into divisions, where a particular division specializes in a specific product or service. You cannot be all things to all person. Or you can specialize in a particular industry. There are some people who specialize and all they do is work in a particular industry. But of course, the more you work in a particular industry, what happens? What happens? Come on. You get better and better and more knowledgeable in that industry. Some of the highest paid copywriters, people that get $50,000 for writing an advertising piece, I see them all the time, specialize in a specific industry. And people say, who's the best person in our industry? Well, it's this copywriter in New York, and they'll hire that copywriter and pay them anything because this copywriter has an intimate knowledge of the industry, and what he does is he adds on his specialized knowledge of that particular company and then creates copy that is worth a fortune. And here's the third, is a particular type of client. Particular type of client or customer or market. Like some people will say, I'm only going to work within the Florida area, or I'm only going to work within driving distance of my home. So they specialize in a market. I'm only going to work with this type of industry. They specialize in this industry. Because what the market pays for is expertise. They pay for you to be very, very good at what they do. There's nothing more effective. And I learned this, and Joe will tell you this, and Merrill will tell you this, the people in professional speaking. When you start off, a person calls up and says, can you speak on this subject? And you're trained to say, absolutely, I specialize in that area. And customers say, oh, really? Yes, that is my specialty. Customer service, selling, marketing, advertising, security concerns, data processing, whatever it is, that's my specialty. You know, we'll say anything to get a job when we're starting off. I know that doesn't apply to you, but so therefore specialization is the key. Now, let me ask you this question. What is the one word in selling, in business, in marketing, in your profession that more determines your sales, your level of income, your repeat business, your referrals, the home you live in, your standard of living, your house, your home, your car, the schools your family goes to, and whether you end up wealthy, financially successful, and retired in a beautiful home on the hill? What's the one word that determines all that? Can you guess? Pardon? Who said that? Credibility. You've been here before. Son of a gun. You're absolutely right. It's the most important single word in business is credibility. It's credibility. Now, Merrill, I'm sorry, Merrill? The gentleman that... Herschel. Herschel had his word. Oh, are you here, Herschel? Yes. His word was verisimilitude. Did you see that? Verisimilitude. What is that? It's another word for credibility. is the truthfulness of what you say. So credibility is everything. Is people buy or not buy because of your credibility? Credibility means that they believe that if you make a promise, you can keep it. If you say that you will do such a thing, that you will do it on time, on schedule, and it will work. There is nothing that is more important than your credibility. And here's the rule with regard to credibility. It is this: everything counts. Everything counts. Everything counts. Everything that you do or don't do, everything that you do or fail to do, everything is a plus or a minus. Everything counts with regard to credibility. And when you specialize in a particular area, and you've done your homework in a particular area, and you're knowledgeable in a particular area, your credibility goes up. Here's an important point. Have you ever spoken to a client that says, well, leave it with me, let me think it over, and they don't hire you? Have you ever had this happen? Say yes. Of course, it'll happen all the time. Now, when you meet a prospect for the first time in business, because of what Herschel was saying, what Joe has said, other people have said, is the client's level of fear is very high. Has anybody here ever made a buying mistake? Of course. You've put out good money and you did not get what you were promised. You did not get the product or service, or it didn't work, or you found it better or cheaper somewhere else, or you couldn't get it serviced, and you were disappointed and you wished you'd never done it at all. You had that experience? Say yes. Okay, so what happens is every single person in our commercial market, Herschel was saying the average person is confronted with 3,000 ads a day. It may be 4,000 or 5,000 if you're living in a big city. What it means is that each person has made buying mistakes, and so therefore when they meet you for the first time, their fear level is very high. Their fear of making a mistake, paying too much, getting the wrong thing, being out the money, being disappointed once again, being left at the altar, being not respected in the morning. And your credibility is very low. So everything that you do from the moment of the first contact with that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the first contact affects this balance. It changes the balance one way or another. It either raises your credibility or lowers it. Now, as your credibility goes up, the fear goes down. As your credibility gets higher and higher, the fear gets lower and lower. And until it finally reaches the point where your credibility is so high, the person books you and pays you exactly what you asked for and is happy with your services. And everything counts. Every single customer contact, everything you do or don't do, every bit of preparation that you put in before you see a client. One of the things I tell my sales audience is I said, before you ever call on a corporate client, go to their website, download the whole website and read it from cover to cover and take notes. When you sit down with a client, you better know everything there is to know about that client that's publicly available. If you don't, then what you're doing is you're trying to con the client. And you know clients are very smart. You know how long it takes a client to know that you're not prepared? You know how long it takes? Within 30 seconds of their meeting, they know that you've done your homework or not. They know it instantly, and your credibility has either gone up or it's gone down. So one of the things I say to people, if you're going to call on a client who can use your services, go to the website, because every single client worthy of your services has a website. And what do people put on the front of their website? They put their best information. Their front page is their bragging page. Is this who we are, and this is what we do, and this is what we represent, and everything else. And when you walk in and say, boy, I'm impressed. I didn't realize you guys have been in business for 27 years. You have 233 people in 13 offices, and you're the number one vendor of this product or service in this market area. Then, geez, where did you find that out? I said, I went to your website. You went to my website. Yes, it's a great website. I was really fascinated. And, of course, you went to the University of Wisconsin, and you're married to a woman named Susan, and you've got 2 kids, and one of your kids plays soccer. Where did you get that? It's in your bio in the website. I mean, it's... When you walk in prepared, people, wow, what happens to your credibility? It goes straight through the roof. It's how soon can you start? How soon can you start? Are you with me so far? But if you walk in, now here's what the idiots used to